Hello, and welcome to the Hive Mind podcast, where the collective wisdom of the travel industry helps you match travelers with the right destinations and the right hotels. I'm your host, Whitney Schindler, founder and CEO of The Hive, a platform designed to give travel advisors organized, actionable insights they can put to work right away. Each week, I sit down for focused, real-world conversations with travel advisors, hoteliers, and supplier partners who know these places inside and out. We break down how each hotel is best suited to a specific client profile, take quick deep dives into destinations, and share pro tips to help you make the most of the Hive. And here's the best part. You don't need to take notes while you listen. Go about your day, tune in, and know that every insight from these conversations is already captured and organized inside the Hive. So it's there when you actually need it. And if you aren't on the Hive yet, you can get resources from this and other episodes when you join our newsletter at thehive.travel/podcast. Today, we have a new episode of The Essentials, a deep dive all about helping you not just understand a destination, but feel it, the energy, vibe, and nuance that make it unique. Trusted destination partners share key details that matter most and help paint an overall picture that will inspire you as you present the destination to clients. When you bring a destination to life with confidence and clarity, you build trust, you spark excitement, and you make it that much easier for your clients to say yes. Joining us today to talk about Casablanca and Rabat in Morocco is Hicham, the co-founder of both Experience Morocco and the Travel Collection. Let's dive in.
Hi, Whitney. Very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So today we are going to dive into Casablanca and Rabat, which are two separate places, but driving from one to the next, you can't always really tell the difference. Is this where you're based personally as well?
Yes, Casablanca is home. It's the biggest city in Morocco by far. And unfortunately, both Casablanca and Rabat are quite often overlooked in a first-time itinerary to Morocco. So when you suggested places to talk about, I was very happy to shine a little bit of a spotlight on these two parts of the country that few people get to see.
Yeah, let's dive into that context a little bit because when I came to Morocco on a fam, Marrakesh and Fez and out in the desert were kind of the primary parts. And the only people who visited Casablanca on our trip was because they were flying into there or they were departing from there. So it was like a logistical point. So they're like, well, I'm here. Let's do a quick walk around a couple of things and then come meet the group in Marrakesh. Like that was kind of the context. And I just happened to fly directly into Marrakesh. So I think I was in Rabat for like 10 seconds and barely knew it, to be honest. So like technically I've been there, but I didn't visit all the sites. So can you provide us a little context and kind of backstory as to why it's often overlooked? Is it just a time consideration? Is it that it's more of a business area of the country and it's less interesting for tourism? Like what's kind of the context behind it and what's changing about that now?
Yeah, so the itinerary that you just described is very much what a lot of people want to do when they come to Morocco, right? They want to see Marrakesh, they want to see Fez, and they want to do the Sahara Desert, and rightly so. Those are definite highlights of the country. When you combine those three kind of must-dos or want-to-dos with a limited number of nights in the country, which typically folks traveling from the US have between 6 and 8 nights. Usually that's kind of what we're dealing with. On occasion, we'll have more of a 10 to 12 night itinerary, but most often it's I'd say 6 to 9 nights. It just becomes logistically challenging to include other parts of the country. Now, a couple of things are changing. Number one, I would say is there's an awakening to the inherent worthwhile nature of spending more time in Morocco. Sorry, that was a bit wordy, but essentially people are waking up to the reality that Morocco is worth spending a little bit more time in. So
there's so much more to explore. You have Tangier and Essaouira and Chefchaouen, and you have all these other places that it's almost like you need 2 trips if you really want to do everything.
Exactly. So I'd say that's the first trend is people are giving us a little bit more time in the country, which is enabling us to then shine a spotlight on Casablanca and Rabat. The other thing that's happening is internal logistics of travel are slowly but surely getting better and better. So looking ahead at the World Cup in 2030, we are really seeing the country make huge investments, not only in highways, but in high-speed trains, which are today of very limited use, but in the next 4 years, it's going to be a transformative impact on Morocco.
And that's going to change everything.
Great. It really is. And so we're quite looking forward to being able to put itineraries together that give people more of a sense of Casablanca and Rabat.
Okay, so makes sense. The next question is hotel inventory. Is that also kind of falling in line with what travelers are going to be excited about and see? Because some of the hotels that we get to talk about in Marrakesh and Fez and the Sahara are not just hotels, they are very much a part of the experience. So do you feel like, is Casablanca and Rabat, are you hoping that it's kind of a 1 or 2 night stay? Is it longer? Like, what's going to really become the story to include this into travelers' itineraries in the next few years?
Yeah, I think it's going to be giving them a choice between doing both or doing one of the two, but definitely encouraging them to sample this vital corridor in Morocco, which includes the economic capital, Casablanca, and the political capital, which is Rabat. So I don't necessarily foresee a world where folks come all the way to Morocco and just do Casablanca and Rabat for a week. We're not quite that far into
Right,
the
right.
development of these two destinations, but definitely today, and we're going to dig into it a little bit more. You could easily do 2 nights in each city. Now, whether that ends up being 4 nights in total or choosing one of the two, there's a lot more that can be offered now than was the case before. And you touched on the hotel question. Without getting into too many details, the high level picture there is the product in both cities was quite stale and in need of new additions to the landscape, and that's happened, right? So in Casablanca, we've seen a couple of interesting properties open up and more in the pipeline, and Rabat has seen the most dramatic shift. Like, we really were in an ecosystem where there were two dominant, or maybe call it three if you want to be generous, properties, and now that the whole landscape has been perturbed and disrupted with a raft of new hotel openings, some of which are already open, and a couple more that are opening in the months ahead. And so that's quite exciting as well in terms of what people can choose from. In terms of product, there's a lot more to pick from there too.
Right. Amazing. Okay. So let's talk about what we're going to do in Casablanca and Rabat. So starting with the kind of, if you come to Casablanca, you must do this types of things, all the way to more unique experiences that might only be of interest to specific client profiles or clients with specific interests. And I don't know if there's anything exclusive in these areas, but let's talk about the full spectrum. What can we look forward to seeing and doing?
Yeah, so in Casablanca, to the extent that you are already coming right now, the kind of places that people know of and are worth doing, the Hassan II Mosque is one of the world's largest mosques. It is a spectacularly beautiful structure. You can just walk around the esplanade from the outside. You can also do a guided visit of the inside, which shows you the history of how the mosque was built. You can also check out the hammam inside the mosque, which is quite spectacular as well. It has one of the most beautiful indoor pools I've ever seen. And so this is already kind of well-known, thing that you can do. That's typically a half day in Casablanca. Another facet of Moroccan history that some people are aware of, some people are not, is there's a long tradition of Moroccan Judaism. And so there's a Moroccan museum of Moroccan Judaism, which traces back the history of the Jewish inhabitants of Morocco throughout centuries in Morocco. And that museum is again, very well built and very well curated. And so for folks interested in the complex history of multiple religions in Morocco, that's a must do as well. So I would say that's another part of the city of Casablanca that is worth seeing. And then I think the more exciting, kind of interesting developments is Casablanca is a live laboratory of architectural experimentation in Morocco. And there's a whole new district that includes a couple of really fantastic parks and modern buildings, and that are espousing modern architecture, but in a way that still pays tribute to traditional Moroccan architecture. And so visiting that part of town, which, I mean, this whole neighborhood did not exist like 15 years ago. So it's a brand new part of town, but huge. And I think it's been interesting to show my friends when they come and visit the city, okay, we'll see the mosque and we'll see the old city center, the old Medina, but then let me take you to modern Casablanca. And that's a whole other experience. And to be able to have those two sides of the city in conversation with each other is something that I think is quite interesting. So that's, so far, what we've covered is kind of what people already know or what's already out there in terms of Casablanca. Right. Now, if you scratch beyond the surface, there's a ton that can be unlocked in terms of meeting locals. So in Arabic, we say bidawa. Bidawa are people who live in Casablanca, the city, the people of Casablanca. If you want to meet experts of any stripe in Morocco, the odds are they're living in Casablanca.
They're living
or Rabat.
there.
And so, yeah. And so to give you a sense of some of the things that we do in Casablanca, anyone interested in modern art, so there's a partnership that we have with the leading contemporary art gallery in Morocco. Their head office and their head agency or location is in Casablanca. They have a fantastic back office full of curations of modern art dating back to the 60s from Moroccan contemporary artists and Pan-African art artists from all over the African continent. So one experience that we do for art lovers is to go into this gallery and have a curated discussion with their docent or their curator-in-chief around how they approach contemporary art and the history of contemporary art in Morocco. That's one example. And it should give you just on the other extreme of things, folks who just want to understand the role of women in Moroccan life. There's a couple of just family friends who are always happy to welcome folks into their homes. And again, that's in Casablanca. So you're entering a private home and having a discussion with, and I mention women because the role of women in a modern Islamic country is often misunderstood. And so I think our guests really appreciate that opportunity to just understand, particularly if you think of women who are in their 60s today, they grew up in a fundamentally different country than the country they're living in right now. And their daughters are growing up again in a very different reality than the one they grew up in. So generally speaking, that exchange of perspectives is quite rich. So from modern art to like meeting my mom's friends, I mean, it's an extreme, but if you want to meet with architects, you want to meet with business people, I mean, the cohort of possible encounters is huge. And unfortunately, when folks are doing the more traditional loop, Fez, Marrakech Desert, it's chock full of culture. But oftentimes we get asked, oh, we'd love to meet an expert in XYZ. And we say, well, we can, but that'd be in Casablanca or Rabat. Yeah. These folks are not living in the touristic parts of the country.
When you're starting out, one of the hardest things is delivering a polished, consistent client experience, especially when you're still finding your footing. That's where the Hive can help. It's your expertise vault where hotel details, destination insights, and advisor takeaways are captured and organized, so you always have professional, client-ready knowledge at your fingertips. With the Hive, you can sound consistent, credible, and prepared from day one, and that's what builds trust and gets clients coming back. Curious? Take a look at thehive.travel. I think this is such a point, like an interesting point that is so obvious when you say it, but that it's not always the first thought. So when clients are wanting to engage with locals and they're wanting to have these authentic experiences, I just had this conversation with a client who came home from Amalfi and they were like, we were really disappointed. It felt like Disney World. And I was like, locals don't live in Amalfi. Like if you want to have that authentic experience, you're probably not going to the places that you're seeing on TikTok. And there is this kind of push and pull with travelers of, we want to see all of these sites and these famous places that we've been seeing images of in National Geographic and magazines and on travel shows for decades. And we want to have this local off the beaten path experience. And there's like, this doesn't always come together in a convenient way that people hope. And I think that this is such a simple, important reminder for both advisors and travelers that if you want to engage with locals, you go to where locals live. And they live in Casablanca and Rabat. Like that's probably going to be the most authentic, engage with locals, rub shoulders in a restaurant with locals type of experience. Yeah. Just like in Cairo, we actually spent a lot of extra time in Cairo while we were there. And we were going out to these residential neighborhoods and going to really awesome restaurants where there were hardly any other tourists. And that was one of our favorite parts of the trip. But we had to make that concerted effort to do that. And I think what I'm hearing now is if you want that type of experience in Morocco, including Rabat at the front end or the back end, is probably where you're going to come home feeling like, not only did I see all the sites and do all the things that I've always wanted to see, but I also got to engage with locals, but I did that with intention. Like I went to where that was happening.
Yes. 100%. And again, which is not, I want to make sure we're not confusing folks here. Like if you go to the Atlas Mountains and you want to have the experience of meeting with a local Berber family, that's where that's supposed to happen. And you're having that experience there.
Yes.
But it's more so when we get folks who are really into, like, again, architecture is a great example. Or another example we had recently was a group of doctors. They're friends, but they all are doctors, and they wanted to meet with Moroccan doctors. Like, well, yeah, we can make that happen in Marrakech, but again, the best doctors in the country are based in Casablanca or Rabat. And if you guys want to do that, and so we were able to get them to add an extra night in Casablanca where they're going to have dinner with a group of Moroccan doctors, and they're looking forward to that. So these are things that if you want that type of experience, spending some time in the corridor between Casablanca and Rabat is worthwhile.
And like this, including Casablanca and Rabat, I also want to be like super clear that this is not like a deal breaker, or it's not logistically hard. Like whenever I'm looking into flights, getting into Casablanca are the easiest flights. So this is probably where most clients are arriving and or departing from. For me to fly into Marrakech was actually a more complicated itinerary. flight wise.
100%. Yep, exactly right. And that's, again, if you want to understand the why, it's the business community
It's the business hub.
is in Casablanca. So that's why there's the most flights in and out of the city. And so, yeah, typically people just land or depart out of Casablanca and go straight to Marrakesh or Fez or someplace else. But to your point, it's not complicated to add these places to the itinerary. It's just a matter of,
Right.
instead of flying in and out, add some time in that actual part of the
When they
country.
ask me to add some of the other places that are a little bit more remote, I'm like, okay, now let's be realistic about these logistics. But
Yes.
Casablanca
Yes,
is easier. Okay,
indeed.
so this is fascinating. I have to ask, just personally, what's the food scene like in Casablanca?
The richest food scene in the country. I mean, Marrakesh is a pretty rich scene as well because of, the importance of tourism, and also not just international tourism, but domestic tourism, meaning Moroccans go to Marrakesh all the time as well. So there's a pretty compelling food scene in Marrakesh. But that being said, the most compelling food scene in the country is in Casablanca. So the irony of Casablanca is you're limited with Moroccan food options, if that makes sense. There's a couple of really good Moroccan food restaurants, but not as many as in Marrakesh. On the other hand, any other type of cuisine that you're interested in, you're going to find in Casablanca, executed at a pretty high degree. And what's interesting is with Moroccan influences, right? So if you look, for instance, at a couple of the places that I love to go to for sushi, they serve really great sushi, but also Japanese dishes that are influenced by Moroccan cooking. And one of my favorite spots, they have this katsu sandwich. So it's like a Japanese sandwich, but the sauce
Yeah.
that they dip it in is a Moroccan tagine sauce. So it's a
Oh
really
my
cool
goodness.
mix of flavors, and that's something that you get with the experimentation that you find in
Probably
Casablanca.
my favorite fusion. I was literally just adding my favorite tonkatsu restaurants in Kyoto to an itinerary before our call this morning.
There you
So
go.
that sounds so. I always love to look at the San Pellegrino 50 best restaurants in the world. I just like to poke
Uh-huh.
around and kind of see what. So in Casablanca, 4 restaurants came up immediately that are either on the 50 best or they're on the discovery list.
Okay.
So that always gives me a sense of like what's going on here. And one of them is Japanese. Um, and
Yeah,
one
no,
is
Casablanca,
vegan. So
you're
that's
spoiled
interesting
for.
too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Is it
Nia?
gosh, yeah, Nia. That's
Nia.
actually like a 5-minute walk from our office. So we go there quite a bit. And I love not telling folks that it's vegan. We just show up and eat and have a great meal. And then you realize afterwards, oh, there was no meat in that. I'm like, yeah, yeah, it's really good.
Right. Yeah.
It's a
No, that's generally
great
the
place
best
to go.
approach with vegan. If somebody's not asking for it, just make them go and then tell them later. Then there's Le
Yeah.
Quatorze,
Look at
which
those. Yeah. Again,
is,
walking
I guess,
distance
is
to
it
the
French
office.
vibes?
Yeah.
I don't know
Yes.
how to say this Japanese one. Iloli? Is that
Liluli, yeah, fantastic restaurant.
okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And
Again,
Dardada.
walking distance to the office. Yeah, and Dartada, which is more of a
Maybe I
Moroccan
need to
party place,
do,
but
maybe I need to come do like a little month co-working session in your
work
office.
absolutely,
If you're
absolutely.
surrounded by all of these
We
restaurants, I think
we really are. Yeah, you're spoiled for choice. Yes,
that's
it's a great
amazing.
neighborhood.
Um, so you've convinced me, I don't know about everyone else that's listening, but when you've got a great hotel, really great sites, an opportunity to do something that is totally different from what you would do elsewhere in the country, which is meeting with the locals and kind of having those experiences, and you've got a good couple of restaurants for dinners at night, like say no more.
Yeah, no,
um,
and much more to come too. So yeah, it's an exciting destination.
So let's talk about kind of those initial discovery moments with a client. So sometimes clients will come to us and they will have a list of what they want to see and do, and we have an opportunity to offer more ideas. Other times, I think when a client comes to me with a list, I start by asking questions just to kind of reconfirm the list. Like you have a
Uh,
list, but is what you're envisioning actually what's going to happen in these places?
yeah,
And so that's kind of where my questioning is coming from. Other times they have no idea whatsoever. All they know is Morocco. And so then we get to kind of dive in. So what types of questions or curiosities would you lean into or does your team lean into to try to decide, is this a client who is really going to not only enjoy but appreciate some time in Casablanca or Rabat, or does this maybe not feel like the best fit and we can just send them, immediately to Marrakesh and Fez, for example?
yeah. I mean, as we mentioned at the start of the call, first of all, it's just a realistic boundary on the duration of the trip, right? So, the more we're playing in the 8 to 12 night space, the more it makes sense to build a case for Casablanca. The more we're on the side of 6, 7, 8 nights, the more we're going to be focused on Fez and Marrakesh and potentially the desert if time allows. So I'd say the first question by far is just like how many days are
Time.
we dealing with and what are the upper and lower bounds on that. And then the other question would be Just a candid discussion, and I really don't mean this in a judgmental way. I just mean it in a, let's have a straightforward conversation. Like to your earlier comment about Amalfi, right? It's like, what are you most interested in? Like the Instagram worthy Morocco is Fez, the desert, and Marrakesh, and there's nothing wrong with that. You're going to see the landscapes you want to see. You're going to have the experiences you want to have. Um, but if you want to go a little bit beyond and really understand the, for example, just as one example that comes to mind right now, there's a real question around the situation for Moroccan youth right now. Morocco has benefited from a demographic explosion where we have if you look at the demographic pyramid of the Moroccan population, there's a big chunk of just of young people. And there's a real debate within the country right now around, are we providing enough employment opportunities for this base of the pyramid? Are we providing enough training and growth opportunities for them for us to take advantage of this demographic opportunity? These kinds of questions, if you're interested in these kinds of questions and getting the answers to these kinds of questions, you're not going to get them in Fez and Marrakesh. But in Casablanca, you could have some interesting conversations with folks who are thinking about the future of Morocco in that regard. And again, some people want to take their thinking cap off when they're on vacation. So if that's the case, don't, but if you're the kind of person who's interested in engaging with these meaty topics around the future of the country, aside from the touristic side of it, then, I think spending a day or two in Casablanca and Rabat, which we haven't yet spoken about, but Rabat also has a ton to offer, could be worth your while. So these are the conversations I have with the clients to then orient them.
Do you find most often, I don't have a lot of clients coming to me asking for these things, and I think it's just because they probably don't even realize that it's possible. I generally find that I need to be the one that kind of brings up these opportunities, and that requires me to know the client really well. Like, is this a client who's going to appreciate this type of opportunity or to be interested in it? Or have I worked with this client on previous trips and like they just want to go to the spa at La Mamounia, which you should go.
Exactly.
It's amazing. Yes. So there's nothing wrong with that. There's also take a picture because my goodness. Okay, let's shift to Rabat. So tell me, let's talk about the activities and the experiences and what people can look forward to. And then we can kind of come back around to decide how you kind of compare and contrast the two options, because most people don't have either one on their radar, let alone deciding between the two.
So I'm happy to tell you about the highlights of Rabat. Recommending one over the other is a political discussion, which my wife and I have been having. My wife is from Rabat, and so ever since we've been dating, which is now 15 years, we keep going back and forth on pros and cons. And I'm trying to, it's like a New York-Boston thing, right? So I'm trying to keep the argument in favor of Casablanca, and she's inevitably defending her home city of Rabat.
Is she available? We might need the, you sound a little biased.
I am. But I very much respect and love the city of Rabat, and have, thanks to my wife, gotten to know it very, very well. And it's, I think it's probably the single most overlooked destination in the country. Typically on an itinerary, it's typically a kind of, you stop on the way to Fez, if you stop at all. So a lot of people skip it, and if they do, it's en route towards Fez, which I believe is what you did, since you mentioned you were there for a hot second. You kind of do a quick tour of the highlights. There's a couple of well-known monuments, and you skip on over to Fez. But yeah, Rabat, so just to put things in perspective, it is the capital of the country. It is where the royal palace is established and where the king himself lives. And it is a couple of things going for it: remarkably clean, a lot of green spaces, which is unfortunately not something you can tell about the rest of the country. So really a lot of public parks and just fantastic greenery all around, and a very interesting history that again gets overlooked, because there's a part of Rabat that was once a pirate enclave, and so there's a really rich history with colorful characters that date back centuries to a particular part of Rabat. A different part of Rabat was part of the Roman Empire, and so really, in terms of just the history of the city, there's a lot to uncover. In terms of monuments, there's a couple that are like within a quick drive or a medium kind of walk from one to the other, which are very much worth visiting. And again, they are situated at the crossroads of a river with the Atlantic Ocean. So even the views that you're having from there are wonderful. And then in terms of off the beaten path, Rabat, we're digging into, I'd say, two kind of areas that our clients and our guests have enjoyed over the years. One is pertaining to street art. So you don't often associate capitals of countries with graffiti and street art, but the truth is Rabat has a thriving street art scene that is actually organized with a public arts festival every year. So there are murals that are painted every single year, and you can do a street art tour of Rabat, which is quite compelling, and again giving
Cool.
voice to the youth, young artists in Rabat, and how they think of the city. So that's a fun one. And then a different one, which is I wouldn't say necessarily fun, but interesting, is the NGOs of the country are all based in Rabat, right? Because it's the
Oh,
political capital. So
okay.
anyone interested in the work of NGOs, and that spans runs the gamut from
Hmm.
folks working on immigration issues to to human rights issues, to the role of women in Moroccan society, and like changing the legal code, the family code in Morocco, to offer more rights for women in Moroccan society. I mean, again, no matter what societal questions you're interested in, there are probably NGOs in Rabat that are working on it. And NGOs, by and large, are quite open and warm to the idea of meeting with visitors, and exposing them to their work. And so this is things that we've facilitated over the years for our guests. Quite happily. But again, you can't ask an NGO to come meet you in Fez or Marrakesh if they're based in
Right.
Rabat, right? So that requires spending some time there. And then the last thing about Rabat that I'll highlight is we have the African Football Cup, which happens, I believe, every other year, and it's happening in a couple of months. The reason I bring that up is Rabat has undergone a very significant overhaul of its sports infrastructure to welcome this competition, and also to welcome the World Cup, which is taking place in
Hmm.
Morocco in 2030. So there's a couple of marvelous brand new stadiums that are also just architectural highlights of the city that are now worth visiting. And that's a brand new addition to the city that, as of a year ago, wasn't really a thing. But the country's moved full speed ahead to get ready for this competition. And yeah, we have a couple of crown jewels now of stadiums that are in Rabat as well. So a lot to unpack now, a lot to discover in the capital city.
If travelers wanted to attend a game, is that something that you would recommend or support or help to do?
Yeah, yes, yeah, we've started getting requests because the cup is happening in December and
Yeah.
January, so it's quite around the corner. And yeah, certainly, there's no shortage of folks interested in watching games, particularly games featuring the Moroccan team, given how well we performed at the last World Cup. So the whole country is crossing fingers and hoping that we will be able to lift the African Cup on home soil. But time will tell if that'll happen or not. The final game is on, I believe, January 24th, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So yeah, hopefully we'll be playing and winning the trophy at the end. But yes, no, the clients have already started reaching out and asking about that. And to the extent that we're able to obtain tickets for them, it's
Mhm.
something that we're happy to do.
As an agency leader, your confidence sets the tone for your team. But one of the hardest parts is helping your advisors feel that same level of confidence. That's why I created The Hive. It's an expertise vault for your entire agency, capturing hotel notes, destination insights, and advisor experiences so everyone has the tools to sound like the expert. When your advisors feel confident, your clients feel it. And that consistency builds trust across your whole business. Check out thehive.travel to see how it can support your team. Are there any other like sporting events or just like general sports that are a really big part of Moroccan culture that travelers could like attend a match or go to an event, or whether it was
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
huge like World Cup type of event or whether it's just like it's just a local match?
Yeah, the local matches have seen an uptick in attendance by travelers, foreign travelers, since the Moroccan team did so well at the World Cup. So, and that's something that we just have a normal kind of championship, and with games
Mhm.
happening on
Yeah.
a weekly basis. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's something we have organized for guests, and it's a great way to partake into the local fandom around
If you
football.
really want to engage with locals, you go sit right in the middle of their section at the local match. I mean, that's really probably going to be
Yes.
the you'll see their true colors there. Awesome. Okay, so Casablanca versus Rabat. So we're talking with clients. Our clients do have an interest. They do want to include a couple extra nights in one or the other. Uh, 4 nights or 3 nights across both is probably not going to work. It's probably going to be
No.
one or the other on a first visit to Morocco.
Yeah. Yeah.
How are we deciding? How are travel advisors guiding that
Yeah.
conversation to be like, well, if you want this, if you want that, you might go here, you might go there. Like, how are we navigating that conversation with clients to settle on
Yeah,
one or
I'll,
the
I'll,
other?
I'll give you kind of the pros of each one. So the pro of Casablanca is going to be just checking the box of one of the largest architectural sites in the world, right? Which is the mosque, the Hassan II Mosque. And also you're kind of facilitating or shortening travel time on day one, right? Because if you arrive into Casablanca, the airport is kind of 30 to 45 minutes away from downtown, depending on traffic. And you're just going to get straight into the city and be able to have a night or two in the economic capital. of the city. So the two pros I'd say are ease of logistics and in terms of day one logistics and checking the box of one of these, iconic sites, architecturally speaking. The pros of Rabat are going to be, while it is a longer drive from the airport, it's an easier flow into the rest of the itinerary. Meaning, if you're ultimately making your way to Fez, going from the airport to Rabat, that's going to be about an hour, give or take an hour and 15-minute drive. And then you're in Rabat, which itself is going to be just under 2 hours from Fez. So you're shortening the drive to Fez, and it's a great way to kind of cover some distance, but not too much distance on a first day, and then unwind in a place that feels very tranquil. So that's another advantage to Rabat is Casablanca. When you get into the city, it feels like the big city. It's hectic, traffic, honking, whereas Rabat, it feels much more tranquil and relaxed. And so that's what it's got going for it. So rather than give you the cons, I guess I give you the pros of each of them.
I think those are like just that alone. I already personally feel myself like leaning to one direction that I won't tell you which. You might be disappointed. You might be disappointed. But I think that those little details are really important. And if anything was going to pull me back toward Casablanca, it would be an awesome meal. Are there restaurants mostly in Casablanca, like these top ones that we were talking about, that are right around your office?
Yeah. That's the single easiest joke that I make with my wife to get her upset is when we go to Rabat, I'm like, are we having dinner at and I say the name because it's like the one restaurant. She's like, there's more restaurants. I'm like, yeah. Whereas in Casablanca, there's plenty opening all the time. So I mean, the dining scene is definitely in favor of Casablanca.
Not everybody cares about food as much as I do, but that is why I travel. So now you've probably got me back to Casablanca, and I'll just put in my earplugs for all those traffic noises. Amazing. Okay, so 2 final questions that may or may not even be a topic for this destination. You tell me. The other thing I really aim to provide for clients is a sense of what to do when they have free time. So if they were to include 2 nights in Casablanca or Rabat, do you feel that they are going to find themselves with a free afternoon at all? Or are we probably going to have it pretty arranged in terms of everything that we've discussed, and then as soon as that's done, they're going to be scooting off to the next spot?
The only reason we'd build in a free afternoon is if we expect that they'll have jet lag and need to crash. So that's kind of why we would do it purposefully. Other than that, it's typically packed. I will say Rabat is much more, to the extent that you have clients, that would be another pro for Rabat. If you have clients who, while they appreciate the value of a guide, at times just want to be able to walk around on their own, Rabat is much more kind of friendly for that than Casablanca. I would not recommend for clients to just go off on their own in Casablanca. It's, again, a busy industrial city, and you want to be with a guide to make sure you're going places where you should be and avoiding parts of the city that you don't want to be in. Rabat, on the other hand, there's a handful of neighborhoods where we could just kind of drop you off and you could walk and meet up with your driver later and you'd be perfectly fine. Cool. So that would be another pro for Rabat.
All right, good. What about shopping? Are there, like, if clients, and I mean, shopping is the whole spectrum, right? Like there's artisanal leather goods and rugs all the way to like high-end local Moroccan fashion designers, right? So if clients are interested in anything on this spectrum, is there anything that they might find or want to make time for in Casablanca or Rabat?
Yeah, they're just really just one, which is if you want like the equivalent of couture kaftans, that would be in Casablanca or Rabat. So the bourgeoisie of Morocco, when we're invited to a wedding or celebration, the women wear kaftans. These are very elaborate embroidered, pieces, and they're made to order, and they're quite pricey. And the best atelier where these are made are in Casablanca and Rabat. It's not to say you can't buy kaftans in other parts of Morocco, but again, the best of the best is going to be in Casablanca and Rabat. Everything else, though, in terms of traditional crafts of Morocco, are actually going to be
actually better.
Marrakesh. Yeah, exactly, in the other parts of the country. So with the exception of super high-end kaftans, I would say everything else you're better off in other parts of the country.
Amazing. Hicham, I really enjoyed this today. I have been, but now feel like I'm more equipped to really talk to clients about Casablanca or Rabat and potentially including that in an itinerary. And that's thanks to you. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Always happy to be here and looking forward to our next conversation.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Hive Mind podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a new episode. And if you know a friend or colleague who would enjoy this, please share it with them. If you would like insights from this episode landing in your inbox each week, join our newsletter at thehive.travel/podcast. And remember, if you'd like to contribute to a future episode, whether it's sharing your destination expertise or your experience touring hotels, just head to thehive.travel/podcast to learn more and express your interest. We'd love to have you join the conversation. Until next time.